Hey folks, Ray, DCRainmaker.com here. Today I'm going to talk about something you probably don't know what the heck it is. You probably never heard of it, and even if you have heard of it, you've probably never seen it in action, which is Garmin Live Event Sharing. It's something that they just sort of announced. They didn't really announce it. They put it in a tiny little font on the bottom of a bunch of their new running watches and triathlon watches and whatnot about a month ago, and I hadn't had a chance to play with it until just finally the last few days. Now, first, a bit of a sad panda spoiler for you. This only works on Android. Yep. So if you're iOS, need not apply. But I'll talk about what it does and why it may be interesting to you and maybe what they could do down the road to make it work on iOS. Okay, now let me just give you a quick 10-second, but it'll probably be 45-second explanation of what this is. Essentially, this will send your friends and family splits. But in particular, it'll send them splits with your pacing information on it. So it'll tell them what your last lap pacing was, but it'll also tell them what your estimated finish time was, both the exact time of day, like 3 p.m. or 3:12 p.m., as well as the finishing time, like 3 hours and 28 minutes. So for most people, if you have friends and family that aren't really runners or, into the racing scene, the little blue dot thing can tend to be kind of confusing, especially when there's no map of the actual course itself. So they don't really have a lot of context for what's going on, versus this is much more straightforward. They're going to get splits every mile or kilometer, whatever you have it set up for, and it shows your exact pacing, and they can figure out where they are on the course and find you much more easily than if you just have a blue dot. So anyways, that's the explainer. Let's kind of dig into a little bit. So to get started, we need two basic things. You need a recent Garmin wearable. By recent, I mean it's something that's announced in the last roughly 3 months. So as of today, that's the Forerunner 45, 245, 945, and MARQ series, this one here. Older watches need not apply, though technically they could add them. There's no hardware limitation here. It's actually it is all exclusively done on the watch or on the phone itself, which gets to the phone side. You need an Android device. And the reason for that isn't because Garmin hates you, it's because Apple hates you, or at least they're trying to protect you. And so in the case of Android devices, third-party apps can go ahead and send messages as you. So those apps can go ahead and pretend that they are you and send a text message as you. Versus on iOS, that's not permitted. Third-party apps cannot send text messages directly. Instead, they have to use different third-party platforms like Amazon or Azure services to go ahead and send those text messages on your behalf. Bit of a nuanced difference there, but it actually matters quite a bit. In the case of Android, that's free for Garmin to implement. In the case of iOS, that means they have to pay money for those different third-party services. It's not a lot of money, but it is money nonetheless. So with that all said, let me show you how it works. So on my Android device here, I'm gonna go ahead into the little hamburger menu in the top left-hand corner. That's what that's called in case you were curious. Down to safety and tracking, and then you'll see live event sharing listed right there. And at this point, it's already connected to my 245 that I have here. It doesn't matter if you have the 245 or 245 music. Again, it doesn't matter which watch you have as long as it's one of the ones I just mentioned a moment ago. So here you see basically three options. Number one is this live event sharing toggle. If you go ahead and select that, it'll basically turn on the feature. The feature will remain on for 24 hours, which means that you can turn it on the night before you race, and so you don't forget about the next morning. Then just bring your phone with you, and as long as you press the start button on your watch, which I assume you'll do, it'll start doing its thing. Next, you've got recipients. So you go in here and you can add recipients from your contact list. They do have to have a phone number. So an email recipient doesn't work for this particular portion. That's for general live tracking. For this, they have to have a phone number. You see, I put my wife in there, and then I put myself on my iPhone side. So I have my Android phone and I have my iPhone, which is right here. And they are on separate carriers. They are on everything's separate. They have no knowledge of each other, different phone numbers, different everything, even different countries for that matter. So they're totally separate. Going back here, you can have up to 5 contacts, by the way, for this. You see message options, and then you have 2 sections within this. One is the message content. So this is what is sent to the person. So you can set your total time for your particular activity, whether you want pace or speed to be sent, the last lap time to be sent, and the estimated completion time. Now the estimated completion time is interesting because that is dependent on what you put in there as your distance. So you can see 5K, 10K, half marathon, marathon, custom, and then on the bottom here, I can go to custom and I can change this to whatever I want. So I can put in sort of an odd distance if you have an odd race or whatever the case is, or just a training day. Yesterday I used it while I was riding, so I put in a unique distance for the training, so I can go ahead and get those same notifications throughout the entire time period. So I'll set this to 5K for now though. You go on back again. Message triggers. The last option we have here is when this message will be sent. So by default, it's at the start, every lap, and at the end. So at the start, the person will get a message saying, hey, you've started, and then every lap notification from there on out. So in this case, you probably want to set it to be auto lap. That way the person gets lap notifications every mile or kilometer or whatever the heck you want it to be. The lap configuration here is driven by your watch. So whatever you set up in your watch is what the people here are going to get. If you're manually lapping, they'll also get notifications when you manual lap. So again, that's sort of a you decision how you want that to be. I wouldn't set it something crazy like every quarter mile if you're doing a marathon, because your friends and family will probably hate you. But with that all said, we're going back here, and you're basically ready to go. And you can see the example down at the bottom there, what this will look like, but we're gonna go outside right now and do this ourselves. But before you do that, if you're finding this interesting, go ahead and mark that like button at the bottom right now, and then we'll go outside. Got it? Like? Okay, good. Now let's head outside. Just gonna do a simple run, 5K run around the rowing basin here. I've got the Forerunner 245 music here. No music, I'm just gonna do it simple style. Just no music. I'm enjoy outside. It's nice out. I've got it set up to my Android phone, which is in the back there of the Camelback. Normally I'd run with the Spy Belt, but I can't figure out where the hell I stuck it, so Camelback it is. And then I have in my pocket, so I can show you this in real time, a iPhone. So this way it's set up that the notifications go from the Android phone to the iPhone. They're two totally separate phones, obviously, but they're also two totally separate carriers, two totally separate numbers, two totally separate everything, even countries for that matter. So it's like being two different people, because it is. So with that, we're gonna get running here. Once I press this button, it's gonna go ahead and send a start notification to my phone. Generally it takes about 30 seconds or so for that to happen. So I'll show you that as I get running down the road. I don't wanna show you that right now and wait, because then it looks like I'm running slow, and we can't have that in the video. So with that, start this watch here. Got two watches. Why wouldn't I have two watches? And start this one right there. And here we go. Get cooking. And boom, that was instant. That was like 8 seconds that time. That was really, really fast. Already came in right there. We'll screenshot this so you can see it later on. And with this, let's get cooking. I'll check in at the 1 mile marker when my first auto lap notification will trigger. Okay, so I just screwed up slightly. I hit the lap button, and the way I have it configured, for better or worse, is that it'll automatically notify anytime a lap is triggered, whether it's auto lap, which I plan to show you, or manual lap, which can be useful for other certain scenarios. For example, say you're a runner and there's a well-known landmark, that person can manual lap at that particular point as opposed to auto lap. Or maybe you just hate auto lap. I don't really know. But what I'll do, 1 mile marker, I'll get things back on track by manual lapping then, and that way you can go and see it at the 2 mile marker. Using my brain. While there are some downsides to the fact that it's tied to the text message on your phone, for example, iOS can't use it, there's actually one good upside to it. You can get direct text messages back from your peoples on your watch. So in this case, if I use my iPhone to reply, like my friends, family, or coaches would do, then in that case, I'll see it on my watch instantly, like motivational stuff. So let me show that real quick here. There we go, just sent it. And here it is over on the watch. 2 mile marker here. Now to manual lap this, there we go. Okay, so you can see here I press that button. We'll see how long it takes to get to the phone right there in real time. And this, there we go, right, boom, just came in right there. I just completed 2.0 miles in 14:08. Average pace, 7:04 a mile. Last lap, 4:36, because I pressed the button because I'm stupid. Estimated finish, 21:58, that's my total lapse time. And then time of day of 10:53. Here we are coming at 3 minute marker, 3 mile marker. Boom, just hit it right then and there. And here comes the text message now. There we go, so it was like 15 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. Pretty quick there. So you can see the average, all the averages are still there just like before. And let's see how close we are to finishing up this run. Okay, just finished it up in 21:59. The exact second I said that, my GoPro battery died, so reshooting it here so you can hear that and see that. You can of course see it on the screen right there. And I'll walk for a second and then we'll chat about this whole thing. Overall, not too shabby. Now, of course, it is limited to Android, which means I'm probably not going to use it a whole lot other than my Android test device. I'd love to see Garmin go ahead and port it over onto iOS. You know, some people say, oh, but Android is like the vast majority of the market share. Not really true, not in this context. Android, yes, enjoys like 80 or 90% market share globally, but when it comes to purchasers of these sort of devices, wearables, whatnot, Android actually tends to be second. In most cases, companies see iOS usage between 50 and 60-ish%, which is almost exactly what I see as well. For example, on my website, I see very consistently iOS usage for smartphone readers at about 60 to 62% of total smartphone usage. Whereas on YouTube here for videos about these watches, in fact, this very watch video, it's almost exactly a 50-50 split. On some videos, it's like 52, 48-ish or so, but it's pretty close to a 50-50 split, way different than the typical like Android 80, 90% numbers. Because again, those numbers are inclusive of people everywhere in the world, which aren't usually buying, $2, $4, $6, $800,000, $1,500 GPS watches that you have to consider. And again, those numbers are pretty similar what I hear from most companies. So I'd like to see Garmin do something that does include iOS users for that. I'd also like to see them do something around the course side of things. So number one, I don't get a live tracking link at the beginning. Garmin agrees on that point, and in fact, they're going to start adding a live tracking link at the very beginning, so you can also see, the blue dot on the map in case that's useful to you. Number two, I'd like to see them include course information. So if you loaded the marathon or whatever route it is, a course onto your watch, I'd like to see your friends and family get that course shown and then also update the exact distance remaining based on that course. So that's something that would be really cool to see. If you look at like Garmin's live tracking over the last 8 or 9 years, or however long they've had it for, they haven't really modified it at all. This is really the first push between this and the safety notification features of the past couple months that we've seen them do anything at all. So hopefully this is like a bit of a renewed interest in this area because it's been sort of neglected for a long, long time. Still, if you're on Android and you've got one of the new watches, it's cool stuff. With that, hope you found this interesting. Go ahead and whack that like button at the bottom there or the subscribe button. I appreciate it. It's time for lunch. Have a good one.